Hi, everybody. Merry Christmas this week from us and ours at Active Self Protection to you and yours and whatever other holidays you're celebrating. Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And I have another one to jump Tim with. And of course, when it comes time, if God forbid you're ever in a defensive encounter and you have to hire an attorney because you're going to need a great attorney at that point. Of course, if we're here in Phoenix, when somebody says, well, John, who would you hire in Phoenix? This guy is who I would hire.
Wow, high praise, thanks, man.
However, of course, he can't hire himself because, was it Abraham Lincoln who says the man who represents himself has a fool for a client?
I think it's credited to him. But
Probably not him.
Hard to say, but it's a good statement and I agree with it.
Right, as a fool for a client, right? And so if God forbid Tim is a CCWer and a CCW instructor and a gun guy, and we know, of course, that we want to have these relationships established in advance. So I want to ask Tim today, as a Christmas kind of present for you, what would he look for in a defensive, criminal defense attorney that he would want to hire to defend him if ever he had to use his gun?
Firearms Legal Protection is who I trust to help me after a use of force incident. If you're a Firearms Legal Protection member, I will also be on your team as a consulting expert, and you can attend our monthly Active Self-Protection training seminars for free. Check out all they offer to their members at the link below.
So what are you looking for?
That's great. Well, first off, I think you want somebody that you can trust, completely trust somebody. So if you get a bad feeling from a dentist, a pediatrician, a mechanic, run, right?
Right.
If you get a bad feeling from an attorney, the first time you meet with that attorney, run like hell. Because that's somebody that you might be spending, as we've talked about before, you might be spending the next 2 or 3 years of your life dealing with that person, paying their bills, trusting their judgment,
Taking their advice,
trusting them to not have your entire family unit destroyed while you go to prison for the next 30 years. I mean, this is like an utmost position of trust. So if you get a weird vibe, if that little voice in the back of your head is chiming in, I don't know if I like this person, then it's not the right person. So that's got to be the first thing.
Can I give an example of that? So this is not criminal defense, but back in 2000, I got rear-ended by a drunk driver. Cost me my commission as a naval officer, my Navy career, and all these other things. A couple of surgeries on my back later. Anyways, big story. When the personal injury portion of it comes up, and I decide, I probably need an attorney. The first attorney I talked to was kind of like, whatever, I'm busy, I've got stuff, I might be able to look at it later. So I was like, all right, whatever, I'm not interested in you. The second attorney I talked to was like, so the guy that hit me was 22, but he was a college student and was driving the car that was owned by his parents that they had given him but kept ownership of. And so he was like, oh man, we're going to attach his mom and dad and their assets, and we're going to take their house and we're going to get everything. And I was like, dude, he's an adult. Like, that doesn't feel right to me. And he's like, oh no, they put themselves in liability for this, and so blah, 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 we're going to get all this. And I was like, no, I don't like that. That gave me the willies.
Good.
That gave me the uglies. And then the third attorney I talked to was like, well, John, you've clearly been wronged here, and this wasn't any of this was your fault, and so we need to make you whole, and it's not your responsibility to make you whole, it's his responsibility to make you whole, and we'll do the best we can to get as whole as we can. And I was like,
and I think one thing he just said that I think was brilliant, that I really liked that lawyer for, was when the lawyer said, we'll do the best we can. I always tell my clients, there's only one promise that I can ever make to you, and that is I'll be completely honest with you. Because anything else is subject to the whims of the criminal justice system, the subject of a jury, the subject of a judge, prosecution, a plaintiff's attorney, defense attorney. I can't make promises, and I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep. So I think that when people start promising you, and you watch a lot of these advertising lawyers with the commercials on TV, and they make these wild, unfounded promises, and it just sort of turns me off. I don't mind that they're advertising. I just think that it's borderline on false advertising when they make promises like that. So when somebody says, I'll do the best I can, and you trust that, I think that's really good. I think that's somebody that's my kind of lawyer. Yeah.
So trust, number one. Next, what are you looking for?
Number two is I want a good lawyer, all right? But if this is a firearms-specific type of case, I want a good lawyer that knows the world of firearms. There's a lot of lawyers that practice criminal defense law that have never handled a firearms case. They've never handled a defensive shooting case. They've maybe handled a couple self-defense cases, but it was more like self-defense in a bar with a bottle kind of stuff, right?
So all of law is like this.
Yeah.
Criminal defense is like this.
Yeah.
Self-defense and criminal law, justified use of force is like this. Firearms is like this.
People don't realize in law school, and I went to a good law school, and I had a great criminal law professor. In fact, he wrote the book that probably 2/3 of the universities in the country used. I think we spent one class on self-defense, and I think there was one case involving self-defense with a firearm. And that's it.
Yeah.
3 years of law school. Good luck. Get out there.
So you better be looking at some post-law school kind of study and additional coursework.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the money that I spent on CLEs involving firearms law in the last 30 years, I could buy another house. I mean, it's you have to put some time and money into this. And also, I've been a competitive shooter for 40 years, and I'm a home gunsmith, and I've been reloading ammunition for 40 years. And so when I talk about reaction time and draw time and movement time and the Tueller drill and angles of inflection, and when we get an expert witness out there with a laser to talk about how the round could not have passed through that without going through this first, and stuff that I've done in cases, I think it's important that you understand how that stuff works. You can't understand that you need an expert witness unless you somewhat speak that language. You can't call Luke Hague and put him on the stand and ask him the right questions if you don't know what questions to ask. And so I think having somebody that has the knowledge, and this might not be important in all cases, but if it's a firearms case, I think it's critically important. I think somebody's got to speak that language.
I can't tell you the number of cases that I've gotten hired as an expert witness that the attorney knows zip diddly squat about guns.
Yep.
And nothing about firearms law and precious little about self-defense
Right.
and about justified use of deadly force. And of course, in some sense, they're like, well, that's why I hire you. And I'm like, but dude, you've got a lot of nuances to work through here in court, and I can help you.
Yeah.
But I can't get you up to that speed that fast. I don't,
I can provide you the list of questions to ask, but I can't tell you when to ask them.
Right.
And when not to,
So one, trustworthy. Two, they better understand not just criminal law, not just self-defense law, but firearms.
Yep.
What else?
Well, a lot of people would say, well, I got to hire the best guy that I can afford. Guys, there's an old saying that if you've been saving for a rainy day, it's raining. Okay, you're not going to be able to spend any of your money if you're in prison for the next 30 years. You're not going to make your house payments if you lose your job for the next 20 years. So this is not the time to scrimp. You don't want to take the low bidder necessarily. And that's not my way of promoting lawyers who charge excessive fees. People don't realize the amount of time that goes into an actual trial process. Over the next year or two, I'm easily going to spend probably 1,000 hours working on this case.
Right.
And at $500 an hour, you can do the math. I mean, it's very, very expensive, and you don't want I've had people come to me and they said, okay, I was involved in this, and I hired a lawyer, and I don't really like the lawyer, and I'd like to change lawyers. And we go through the whole ethical dance of, you can speak to me, but I can't really advise you because you're represented by somebody else.
Right.
You have the right to fire any lawyer you want. Blah 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 blah. By the way, how much did you pay for a retainer? $4,000.
Well, that's why you got a crappy lawyer.
$4,000. Okay, well, that's somebody that either has no idea what they're getting into, or they're so desperate for work that you probably don't want them, right? Because that's just an unreasonable. I mean, it's just not. It just doesn't bear any semblance of reality. So it's not going to be cheap, guys. And the lowest bidder is not necessarily the best option. Now that said, compare. Go to a couple lawyers. Hey, this other guy told me he'd take it for 50 grand. You're asking for 100. Do you have any room to move on that? If somebody has that conversation with me, I might say, well, you know what, I'm not going to bid against myself, but I'll tell you what, can you come up with 75? I mean, it's negotiable, so that's something to talk about. But you don't just go to the guy that gives you the lowest bid. I mean, there's just too much on the line here. Your entire future depends upon how this thing turns out. So.
And I've said this, look, if you had two equally qualified, excellent criminal defense attorneys with expertise in firearms, and one said, I want 100 grand to defend you in this case, and one said, I want 50,
I'd go with the 50.
Take the 50.
If I felt they were both competent to the same level, then save the money.
Sure, take the 50. But now, are you doing this dance while you're facing criminal charges? Yeah. That's good luck, number one. Number two, there's no such thing as two equally prepared people, And I say this on my side, on the expert witness world, I don't often have it. Usually by the time the lawyer calls me and he goes, hey, would you just send me your rate sheet? Sure, here's my rate sheet. Great, here's discovery, have a nice day. Yeah. And I charge a bunch of money, but I've had a couple times when people go, wow, John, man, I said, well, listen, I know a couple other people who charge less if you're interested in them. I don't have a problem with that. Right. It's not like I ain't got anything to do with my day.
You reach a point in life where you say, you know what, I know how much work this is going to be, and if I'm adequately paid to do it, that's my job. But I've got other work I can do, and I can also go home and play with my daughters and my dogs. Yep. I'm not going to sit here and resent the fact that I'm getting pennies on the dollar from what I'm worth, and so honest to God, good luck with that person. I sincerely hope it works out. And that's not sarcasm, it's the truth.
Yeah.
But I'm at that point where I'm not desperate for work, and so I'm not going to underbid myself and resent working on the case.
So you want a lawyer who's trustworthy. I know that sounds like a contradictory statement. You want a lawyer who knows this particular expertise. And I also think that you want somebody who is experienced enough to know their worth. And if they don't know their worth, that's a red flag.
It is.
What else would you say?
A lot of people say, they'll ask me, well, what's your track record? What's your win and loss ratio?
Terrible
And that's
question.
a terrible question because there's really no way to tell you what's a win and a loss. I mean, if I got a plea bargain on a case that I never thought I would get, I'll give you a quick example. I had a client that was caught for the third DUI within the span of a year. This is recent. Third DUI within the span of a year. He was on his motorcycle. He was going 160 miles per hour on the freeway. They followed him with a helicopter. They finally caught him in a parking garage where he dumped the bike and skidded it into the side of a police car. When they arrested him, he had clearly dealer amounts of marijuana on him with a bunch of glassine envelopes and 2 scales. So he was clearly selling drugs.
He was on his way to Bible
His
study.
third DUI, and he had tried to outrun a helicopter. I got that down, believe it or not, after months of work, I got down to where the plea offer ended up being 1 day in jail. And and then the judge said, no way, I'm not abiding by this, Mr. Forshee. You have 3 minutes. I've got a trial starting in 5. You have 3 minutes to convince me why this isn't a ridiculous plea offer. I don't know how I did it, but at the end of the 3 minutes, she said, I'm gonna go ahead and honor the plea offer. So that was a case, is that a win? Well, it wasn't a not guilty verdict. A lot of people say, what's your win-loss record? That's an impossible question to ask because I might define win a lot different than you do. So if they just say, oh, I'm 22-0, they're lying to you. Or else they just have handpicked, they're the senior partner in the case in the firm, and they've handpicked the only cases that are going to be the always winnable cases, and they cherry-pick their data.
Yeah, who might go, well, I'm not going to take a case I don't think I can win, and so I'll just say, no thanks, I'm not going to do that.
And that might be the case, in which case, God bless you that you have that ability to pick and choose like that, but I mean, most of us don't have that ability.
And, well, on the other side, like, so you see prosecutors that they have a conviction rate. Well, again, they get to choose if they're going to pursue charges or not.
When I was a prosecutor, I was literally 52-0. Literally.
Because you're never going to take them to court unless you know.
On small, meaningless cases where I knew I had all the evidence completely wrapped up, and the judge knew basically the whole tenor of the case anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So what? Yeah. What's that prove? I was 52-0 on jury trial, little misdemeanor cases. Who cares?
Yeah. And so to put a fine point on things, okay? So Firearms Legal Protection always sponsors John's briefs, okay? And one of the reasons I like them is they go out and vet attorneys.
Yeah.
They go out and it's not just, oh, okay, well, you go figure this out on your own. It's, no, man, in every state we go and talk to folks who have the expertise, who have the time, that we know what we're doing. They, of course, are negotiating fee agreements with these people for those times. And I like that stuff. Yeah. Somebody else that has that, yeah,
They
man.
actually do vet the attorneys too. They really do.
They really do. And so, again, this is why I know here in my town, in Phoenix, Arizona, I know who I'm calling, right? And I know how that's going to go. And listen, hey, man, I need some help. But if I travel the country.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I, was recently in South Dakota. I was recently in Georgia. I have been recently in Nebraska, all over the place. And if I were to, God forbid, get in a gunfight in one of those places, well, Tim's not going to help me in Nebraska. He's not admitted to the bar in Nebraska.
No, but I can get pro hoc vice status.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's, again, I can't ever promise that.
Right. So I can try to get pro hoc vice.
Yeah.
With an attorney in town who knows their world, and now we got to find him. Well, instead, I've got a known resource that already has attorneys there that I don't necessarily have to worry about the pro hoc vice thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yes.
So now you know what to look for in your attorney. Okay. So you want somebody you can trust. If you get the squick, trust your gut.
Yep.
Number 2, they gotta have expertise. And you heard him say that's a great question to ask somebody. How many CLE hours in firearms law and in justification in self-defense do you have in the last 5 years?
And sometimes it's obvious. Just go to their website. I'm not gonna name names, but I know a lawyer, you know this lawyer as well, who broadcasts the fact that he's a firearms attorney.
Yeah.
You go to his website and he's holding an AR-15 with his complete hand on the grip of the AR-15. He doesn't even have a firing grip on the gun. And it's like, clearly he has zero firearms experience and expertise, and he's willing to, that's the picture he chose to put on his website.
Right.
So he's that oblivious to it. I don't need to interview that guy. I know he has no knowledge about guns. Move on. So, but listen to your gut, on that stuff.
And they should. They should know their worth. If they are fresh-faced out of law school, okay, fine. But maybe let's find somebody to be the lead here who's got a little bit more experience.
If you're hiring a medical malpractice attorney and that attorney knows nothing about surgeries, and the case is about a botched surgery, and they don't know what a scalpel is versus a Peterson clamp, that's not somebody I want handling the case.
It's not somebody we want handling the case. Yeah. Simple as that. Tim, thanks for the knowledge, man.
I don't know what you're getting, Annie, but you're welcome for what you got. So thanks.